you read about what supposedly transpired, it just makes you really wonder. There has to be more going on. And, people are funny. Unless they see something, they forget about it. And even if they see something major bad, right? They seem to forget about it really, really fast.
Right. Oh, yeah, they do. They do. It gets out of their memory really, really quickly. They move on to something else.
So I know. What's your feeling? Do you feel that we're being visited by, life from other planets?
Oh, absolutely. We've been visited for thousands and thousands of years by life from other planets. There's just no doubt of it. There's too many hundreds of thousands of depictions and documents and accounts and like you said, going all the way back to stone carvings from visits from otherworldly beings.
Well, you know what? Even if you go to around the equator, and you talk to some of these tribes, right, which they have, they talk about, UFOs. Now we're talking about basically some of the tribes that were at one time headhunters and stuff like that. And, they talked about it. You talk about tribes even in Africa, again, some of them, they talk about like objects coming down from the sky, men in suits. How would they even known about it? They wouldn't have.
Right. How would they have, you get the same description that happened in 1973 in 1864 and in 1270. It's the same basic concept, the same. If there's one of the most astonishing things, there's an Egyptian carving inside. I don't know if it's one of the pyramids, but it's from ancient Egypt, and it's a perfect image of a small gray. The eyes, the head, the figure, the size. It's exactly. It's as if the grays that are all over the internet now, photographs are there. And that's, that's 2,700 years ago,
Oh, yeah. Now, the gray is supposed to be the ones that are somewhat friendly with, Earth beings. But how can they be friendly if they abduct you and still do, experiments on you and all this stuff? And then you get into like Linda Morton Howe, with the cattle, the things going on with cattle where they were basically all the insides were removed and all this stuff, and then the remains left there. And, when the medical people examined these animals, they said, hey, we're not even capable of doing this. The cuts and all this stuff, how they removed it is, it had been done even with better than a laser equipment. So, then, again, it gets debunked really fast when that happens.
Yeah, I've never really got into the cattle mutilation thing very much, but I have read a little bit about it. And yeah, they said that even with some of the most delicate instruments they have today, it would be very hard to duplicate that, especially like out in a field in the middle of nowhere without these expensive instruments. It would be next to impossible to duplicate that.
Well, it's really interesting, too, on that is, that some of the reports, they show that there's no footprints, there's no anything where another animal attacked it. Basically what it looks like is that the animal was probably lifted up somewhere, done its thing, and then dropped back down. And, and then you start wondering about some of the people have gone missing, not in the forest system, but just walking down the road, for example, or, just maybe disappeared. There's so many people are vanishing on a regular basis. With no trace. I mean, some of it, yeah, maybe there's a killer out there going around and a serial killer and killing people, but there's so many people. If you look at how many people are missing every year, that went on a road trip or got on their bicycle and rode somewhere and never was heard of again.
Never came back.
Never came back.
And never showed back. Yeah.
So I don't know. I've been really leery myself. I mean, I don't want to go out in the woods or, I ride a motorcycle, but you know what? I don't go way out in the woods, on roads like that, because I want to make sure there's some car traffic around.
Yeah, not very smart to go too far out by yourself anyway.
Now, I realize that the older I get. Now, the spaceship, basically came down and clipped a windmill, or you said, or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean...
The early in the morning, like 5:55 in the morning, almost 6 a.m., a single alien vessel clipped the edge of a fast-moving windmill and slammed into the water tower in Aurora, Texas. Now, it crashed to the ground. The local judge had a flower garden underneath the water tower, and it crashed into the flower garden. I tried to picture this and write this the way the people of 1897 would react, how the sheriff and the deputy and some of the locals would react to such an unprecedented event happening in their little tiny town. I mean, Aurora, Texas at the time, I think had 370 people total all over the area. So it was a very small community. So what would they do? How would they think? How would they react to this? Would they put him in a homemade coffin and line him up on the boardwalk like they used to do the old outlaws and take pictures of him? Would they rope ropes around the remainder of the craft and put it behind a horse hitched wagon with some mules and tow it away? Those are the kind of things that I tried to simulate in my telling of the tale, but to stay true to all the historical accounts from the newspapers and stuff.
I'm just wondering, if it was me, I probably would have, at that time frame, we have to realize that people weren't that educated. So that's number one. So, I mean, them, even knowing what a UFO is or alien, they wouldn't have the slightest idea. But, the first thing that would come in somebody's mind, oh, this is probably a devil, or this is probably, Satan, or this is something, and knowing people, if I was timed back in that time frame, first thing I probably would have done is buried it and got rid of all the stuff because I'd be scared.
Well, that's what they did. They buried the pilot the very next day in the local cemetery. Just because they were good-hearted folks and they didn't know what else to do with him, they did what they thought was the right thing to do, and they dumped the remainder of the craft down an abandoned well, which really contaminated the water in the well, and people were getting sick off of it. They finally dug out what of the craft was left, I think, in the mid-1950s and did away with it. I don't know. It's real sketchy what happened to it. But like 1897 or 8, just not too long after this happened, they dumped the remainder of the craft down a well.
Yeah, because that's probably what they would think. Hey, let's just get rid of it. It's not something we want, and they're probably scared of it. But then if you talk about like in the 50s, they probably, I hate to say it, the government, at that time frame, certainly probably would have recovered what was left of it, and who knows where it went.
They very well could have. Nowadays, they went back to this well. One of these shows, Ancient Aliens or UFO Hunters or something, and the well was capped off, and they got a tractor or bulldozer or something and uncapped it and went down in there, and all they found was a lot of snakes, but I think they did find a few fragments of some kind of metal that was pretty odd to them.
Yeah, that would be kind of hard to explain an old well, back from that time frame, and the pieces of metal and stuff like that. I wonder if they ever went into the cemetery and dug up the grave or anything like that. And if they did, I hate to say it, whatever they found, it's going to be they found nothing.
Right. Well, UPI ran the story in 1970 something. Maybe it was 1973 too, but. It had all but forgotten at the time. Well, UPI picked it up and ran a story, and people were going over there with picks and shovels, determined to dig up the grave to see what was in it. Well, the Aurora City Council put a stop to that. They even went so far as to have the local sheriff out there, armed guards at night over the cemetery to make sure nobody disturbed the grave. Somebody stole there was an old grave marker on its grave with a picture of it looks just like a flying saucer with 3 windows carved into the stone. Somebody stole the headstone. Again, and somebody else went in and did some digging around the grave, not dug it up, but I think they saw some metal fragments with a metal detector, and somebody put like a pipe down in there to retrieve those metal fragments. Whether it was the government, maybe whether it was a fanatic, who I don't know. They don't know.
But don't forget, though, in the 70s, Project Blue Book was going really strong. So, regardless, they were out interviewing people, right, to get UFO reports. But at the same time, they made a point of every one of the cases to basically debunk it the best they could. They had another division. That's what they did. They debunked whatever, Project Blue Book found. They had another group that debunked it, just, let the American people know, oh no, it wasn't true. Hey.
And even in the last few years, some of the UFO hunters have been out there with seismic equipment over the top of the grave, and there is something buried in there. There's a small being buried in that grave, but of course they're not going to dig it up and find out what it is. But it gets too deteriorated. It's been there 121 years, but they did see images that there's something buried there. They just don't know what.
Oh, wow. Now, so you're going to be back on June 4th from 8 to 10. And
okay.
I'm really glad that you came in and filled in for our guest tonight. And I'm really sorry again, Susan. I got your email while I was talking, and we will reschedule you. And I'm sorry it happened, but the show has to go on. Why don't you tell everybody again where they can buy your book? And if you have a website, go ahead and plug it, because, you deserve that.
All right. Well, again, it was my pleasure to come on tonight. You emailed me like 5 minutes before we were ready to go on. I said, sure, let's do this. My name's Kerry Trent Haggard. The name of the book is Traveler, and it's available on Amazon. So if you go to my name, Kerry, Kerry, Trent Haggard and Traveler at Amazon, the book is available. And we do a little production studio here in Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania. Our email address is wheelsofthepastproductions@gmail.com. And we're trying to do good things with these antique cars and pay some homage to those as well.
Oh, great. Hey, well, I want to thank you again, Kerry, for coming on. I'm going to go through on our server and onto Spreaker Radio, which we're live on, and then on TuneIn, which we'll be, actually live on one of those, and one of them is going to be a replay, again, with iHeart and iTunes. This will be a replay, but after we get off, I'm going to correct and change and say that your name instead of her name, and then change everything for people, can listen to the show and, enjoy it.
Well, thank you very much, and I look forward to next month talking to you again.
Hey, well, again, thank you for coming on, and I really appreciate it.
Good night.
Good night. Okay, again, Susan, I'm really sorry. This, I had to, put a different guest on, but I think it was a little bit nice tonight talking about UFOs. Do they exist? My feeling is yes. Let's face it, there's been too much going on for the last couple thousand years out there that there is life out there in the stars. Are we being visited? I think we are. You think the government's telling the truth about UFOs? I don't think so. But that's just my opinion. You have to believe what you believe. Tomorrow we'll be back on between 8 and 10 p.m. Pacific West Coast time. Tonight we are only on to 9 o'clock because of a gas problem, but I'm glad we could at least, have a guest in for an hour. When you go on to Spreaker Radio, it's very important that you click on follow.